If you've seen my last AmiSide related video, you know that I finally talked about and developed Shark alongside her group of rogues. And other than that area of the story of AmiSide, the last thing that I really have left to develop is the POV that is inside of Creek Colony, the neighbouring colony to Thistle Colony, where Shark was originally the healer. To do this, I thought that I would finally make the main characters from Creek Colony reference sheets, proper ones, and talk about them alongside the general plot that doesn't involve spoilers if it comes about. So, first off is Snail, who was born to Marsh and Weed, which is a cat that lady convinced me to name Weed, and I was like, okay fine, but he has to be dead because I'm not having a character called Weed, and people have already spotted it on the family tree. So yeah, his dad's called Weed, but when he was barely old enough to understand what was really going on, it was around the time of Shark's involvement in Creek Colony, and so there were many invasions from the nearby Thistle Colony, which took many of the lives of the Creek Colony cats, including Snail's father. As well as this, the betrayal of their healer Shark shook Snail's family. His older brother Beach was the healer's trainee at the time, and upon witnessing Shark murder their delegate, he fled, and his family hasn't seen him since. Snail had learned a few things from his brother, nothing like real healer training, but when the colony was at its most desperate, he tried his best to help out where he could. As Snail grew, he was appointed to train under his cousin, Duck, one of his mother's siblings' kits. Duck was best known as one of the strongest and most prolific combatants at the time in Creek Colony, and the expectations this could come with rattled Snail a little bit. Luckily though, to his delight, Duck turned out also to be one of the sweetest cats of the colony, and Snail was always put at ease during training. Despite how well his training seemed to be going, Snail could never shake the yearning that he had for healing that he'd first felt when he used his brother's techniques to help his colony during the winter. As the timeline sits currently at the beginning of AmiSide, Snail is still training under Duck, but he's trying his best to figure out some possible way to convince his trainer to switch to the job of healer with him, as he's dropped the idea jokingly a few times and was surprised to find that Duck actually was having some doubts of being stuck as this big strong fighter for their whole life. So, after filming that little bit of the voiceover, I realised that the video is still only at 6 minutes, and I wasn't really sure what to add on, but I do have a scene that I wrote a couple years, I think 2 years ago this month, that I shared on the Discord again yesterday, about Fever and Snail meeting for the first time, because Snail's plot is half him in Creek Colony and half about him and Fever. Because obviously Snail is interested in being a healer, so you can guess where that kind of goes, but I thought that I would read out this scene that I wrote just to fill in some of the space, so I'm just going to do that now. The air was crisp with the chill of leaf bare, disturbed only by figures of cats making their way towards the pools, which were glittering beneath the starlight. Fever opened his jaws slightly to taste the air, and could scent the grotto's Briar was already waiting patiently for the other cats to appear. "Come on, Snow," the young cat beamed, picking up the pace in his steps. "Briar is already waiting for us, and I bet Peony isn't far off either." He darted a few leaps ahead, bouncing on his paws as he turned impatiently to his mentor. Snow sniffed the air and shot their trainee a smile. "You go ahead. I'm still aching from chasing you around all day. I'll only be a minute." Fever nodded and dashed away over the next clump of grass out of sight. He pushed through the unkempt grasses and followed the river until he could see the clear pools in the distance. Like he scented, Grotto Colony and Ridge Colony's healers were already sitting on the dusty earth in the centre of the pools, shaking out their damp fur and chatting as Fever approached. "Fever," a sweet brown Molly, Ridge Colony's healer Peony, signed alongside her soft voice with a smile. "How are you? Where's Snow?" The small trainee grinned, holding his head above the water as he sloppily swam to where the other cats sat. He reached Peony and shook out his soft fur. "Hi, I've been great. Snow's just on their way." He waved his tail and moved his paws in certain ways, hopping eagerly between each sign to the deaf cat. Once Snow had made their way to the others and groomed their drenched fur, the 4 cats were ready to get on with the event. A few tail lengths from where they sat was a deep tunnel which led to where they would stay for their visit to the Green Eternal. "Come on, Fever," called Snow as they made their way to the tunnel. Briar's round tail disappeared into the darkness below as Fever turned to face the others, but as he took a step forward, there was a prickle of movement behind him. His ears pricked, and he turned his head back to the grasses towards the gathering island. "I'll be down soon, go ahead without me." His mentor dipped their head and disappeared into the tunnel as Fever got to his paws and peered across the waters. Much to his surprise, 2 cats appeared over the tall grasses. "Creek colony?" Fever chirped, baffled as he wrinkled his nose at the strong fish scent carried by the wind from the 2 figures. There hadn't been Creek colony cats at the Half Moon meeting since before he was even eating prey. The 2 cats, one huge and one small, dipped their heads sheepishly to the round trainee as they slipped effortlessly across the waters. Fever stepped back, letting them clamber out, and winced as they shook out their fur and sent water spraying around them. "Hi!" The small Tom was first to speak, a swamp brown cat with green eyes. "I'm Snail." The cat smiled at Fever, dipping his head to give his chest a few embarrassed licks as the older cat rose their head to speak. "I'm Duck. My trainee and I have taken over Creek Colony's healer roles." They purred. "No way!" Fever's voice rang around the open space as he hopped up and down. "Finally, Creek Colony has healers. Come with me, we're about to start the meeting. I can tell you all about it. We do so much cool stuff with our ancestors and..." As Fever eagerly bounded off ahead towards the tunnel, glancing back occasionally at the other trainee, Duck and Snail exchanged amused glances before following him into the tunnel. "Snow! Briar! Peony! Creek Colony has new healers!" Fever called, racing into the cave where the older cat sat. Snow turned to their trainee. "Really? Are they on their way?" Fever nodded and turned to the tunnel, where the large cat and their trainee emerged into the light of the gleaming crystals. Duck gave a sheepish nod to the older cats, while Fever bounded over to Snail. "I've never gotten to spend time with another healer trainee. None of the other colonies have them, so it's just me and the older ones. But now you're here, we can be best friends and talk about herbs and practice healing and..." Fever cut himself off as he noticed the other Tom purring in amusement. "Oh wait, sorry, I talk cats' ears off when I'm excited." Snail flashed with guilt. "Oh no, you're fine. I enjoy listening. It's no bother to me. I'm excited too. I've always wanted to be a healer and now I'm doing it," he assured, beaming with pride. Fever flashed him a pleased grin as the other cats called the other 2 over and made their way to the crystal pool together. "I used to be one of the top combatants in Creek Colony." The 2 trainees sat beside one another as Duck explained. "But, as you know, Creek Colony hasn't had a healer for so long, and no one was chosen by the Green Eternal, so..." They glanced over to Snail, who was giggling with Fever about some unrelated story. Snail asked if we could go to the Green Eternal ourselves and ask them to help us. So I became a healer for him, and that's why we're here now. The other cats watched, nodding with each word, as Peony watched Briar sign in translation. "That's very good of you, Duck," mewed the brown Molly, nodding in respect. "You've done your colony a great duty and given up a lot to help your peers." The large cat smiled, dipping their head. Snail was the one who wanted us to do it after all. Creek Colony owes him a lot. At his mentor's words, Snail looked up from his new friend and beamed at his mentor. "Creek Colony needed us, and I knew we could help them. I just hope that the Green Eternal agrees to help us." Each cat was laying beside the cool water, their whiskers twitching as water dripped from them. The 2 apprentices were beside each other, chatting in hushed whispers as to not disturb the others. "The Green Eternal is so cool. You'll see once you get there. It's kind of scary the first time. I've only been once before and I remember being super freaked out. But the cats are really nice and I'm sure they'll be really stoked that you've decided to become a healer." Fever mewed under his breath as Snail gazed unsurely at the water. "I hope so," the young cat breathed. "Thanks for being so nice to me, Fever, even though we just met." The other Tom turned slightly to Snail, his usual beaming smile a little softer. "Of course! I've been wanting a healer trainee friend since I started out. You'll be great." Fever turned and rested his head on his paws, letting his whiskers dip into the sparkling water. The crystals which lined and scattered the cave gleamed under the moonlight that seeped between the cracks in the earth above, sending purple and green hues bouncing off of the rippling pools. As Snail gazed at him, Fever squeezed his eyes tightly closed, the tip of his tail quivering in excitement. He must be really excited to see the Green Eternal, Snail thought, resting his head down beside his new friend and, after a moment and another glance at Fever, he touched his nose to the water and closed his eyes as he felt the dark curtains of sleep envelop him. The next 2 cats are less developed than Snail story-wise, just because he's the main protagonist within Creek Colony and has connections to the main cast and the actual story of AmiSide. But they're still worth mentioning since I really like them as characters and they do have their own plots alongside Snail. The first of the 2 is Trout, a molly born to Dawn and Shank, her mother actually being Fever's aunt. Despite this connection to a cat from another colony, Trout had no idea that the long-dead Bream's kit had survived, and like the rest of her colony, she assumes that Fever died with his mother when neither of them returned from Bream's mission to get help for her sick son in Thistle Colony. Trout's mother, Dawn, always thought that her sister-in-law was foolish, especially when she decided to try their greatest enemy for help and never returned. So Trout doesn't really feel any need to dive into her family on that side. Instead, she focuses her attention on her mother and maternal grandparent, who are the only living cats from her family in Creek Colony after the winter. I think I should mention here that a big part of Creek Colony in the current AmiSide is that a lot of cats were lost during the winter before the story starts. So a lot of cats don't have a family, or they have very few family members left, Trout being one of these cats. And being surrounded by a loss since she was born has definitely shaped her into a cat that's on the cooler side. Other than her remaining family, Trout only really cares about her two closest friends, Perch and Snail. Throughout their days as trainees so far, Trout has developed a massive crush on Snail, though she would never admit it. Perch on the other hand is more than aware, and loves to tease Trout, which she hates. When the winter was in full swing and Snail began to help out with healer duties, Trout was horrified by the idea of him becoming a healer and no longer training with her. But luckily he got Duck as a trainer, and Trout thinks that they're sure to shape him into a brilliant combatant. Trout's trainer is the delegate Temper, a cat that matches Trout's personality as a hot-headed and snappy character. They don't balance each other out, per se, but the energy that they create through their arguments during training has definitely proven to be useful in getting Trout to give it her all. The last cat of the three is Perch, a cat born to sea and shore. With their matching names, this couple is very popular in the colony, despite Sea's shy personality, and this carries over onto Perch, who has been fawned over since he was born. Perch is completely oblivious to the possible favouritism he faces, however, and so far, she has lived her life completely carefree, putting all of their energy into their family and friends. Perch's trainer is Foam, however she recently had a kit, and so her mate Gar took over. Perch thinks that the Tom is a lot stricter and less fun to train with than his mate, but with the tiny kit Berry being out in the world finally, she's just holding on to Foam being able to come back and train him soon. He loves Trout and Snail, and is over the moon that he has a solid friend group that all seem to care about each other, like an extra little family. Perch is a cat's cat. He loves to socialise and knows every cat in the colony on at least some personal level, being very close with and loved by quite a few of the colony members. Creek Colony has a lot of trainees compared to the other groups, but Perch hasn't quite figured out how to get into the group of them properly. He thinks that Apple and Echo are cool, but he gets shooed away whenever he tries to make conversation, which is probably because all he can think of to ask them is how it is to be the commander's kids, and like, wow, they have such this big legacy, which I don't think they're very fond of. And the other trainees, Soot and Wild, seem to keep to each other more than branching out and getting close to other cats. Despite this, Perch is more than happy with the cats he's got, and is well known by his friends for going along with whatever they say, but having his own opinion and knowing when something is a bad idea. He thinks it's amazing that his best friend Trout is in love with his other best friend, and it's proved one of the biggest challenges he's ever faced to keep her mouth shut about the secret. I hope this video was okay. I hope the reading was okay. I'm sorry that the microphone keeps popping when I say P's and T's. I don't know where my microphone cover's gone. I have no idea. I really hate reading shit out that I've written and just reading in general, so I'm sorry if it was really cringy and shit, or if the writing was bad. It's old, anything like that. But yeah, hopefully now I kind of can narrow down the specific scenes that these guys are in and then actually get AmiSide going. That's the goal, at least. I'm hoping to open a Patreon soon. If anyone would be interested in me opening a Patreon, please let me know if there's any actual demand for it. It would basically just involve cameos in the comic, early access, different channels in the Discord, you get art every month, that kind of thing. But yeah, other than that, I will try and think of more AmiSide videos. Sorry if it's been a bit weird me being on a video making streak lately. I don't know what's been up with that. I'm jobless, so that is probably why I've got so much free time on my hands. But I'm hoping that the map that I just put a call out for gets done soon. And by soon I mean whenever. I just want it done at all. Like, it filled up really quick and people seem to really enjoy it, so I'm really excited for that. If you haven't seen the storyboard already, it's the video before this one, so go check it out. If you haven't seen my video on Shark, check that out as well, and any of my other AmiSide videos. Join the Discord server that is linked in some of my videos. I don't really link it anymore, just because I forget. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully I'll be out with new content soon. Ask me anything you want about the characters, or characters that I haven't covered that you know exist, kind of thing. But yeah, I will see you next time.